All right, we're gonna record it. We're gonna see what happens.
Do it.
All right. Welcome everybody. This is the I Know Nothing podcast. I have the originator, I guess
Welcome to the I Know
co-originator.
Nothing podcast where you will learn nothing. Sorry.
You will absolutely learn nothing this podcast. Definitely
We know
nothing. Maybe
nothing.
there will be an episode 2.
It will
Everybody,
get
this is Rob
worse.
Andrews. This is Rob Andrews, Dr. Rob Andrews. He's been my best friend for, I don't know, a decade now. Um, he is actually a co-originator of the I Know Nothing podcast. And we're going to get into the story in a second. But before I kind of go into it, I want Robbie to give his elevator pitch of just who he is, where he's coming from, everything like that. So, Rob, all you.
My elevated pitch. So I'm a physiotherapist. I guess so. I went to physiotherapy school out in Toro, out in Long Island. I did my last, basically how I got to kind of where I'm at now. My kind of quick backstories. I did my last clinical down in Birmingham, Alabama, Champion Sports Medicine. I just wanted to kind of get my feet wet, in the sports world and working with athletes and high level athletes at that. So, for those of you who don't know, Birmingham's kind of a hot spot for that. Dr. Andrews is kind of the OG down there. So I set up a clinical for 16 weeks to work at the PT clinic, kind of associated with them. Uh, Kevin Will, who's kind of one of the goats in sports physiotherapy. He's been doing it for a long time, put out a ton of research, and really kind of changed the way we practice and we treat, ACLs, UCLs, rotator cuff injuries, just overhead athletes, all athletes. So I was fortunate enough to be down there, 4 month rotation. They asked if I wanted to stick around, take a job with them. So, you're an idiot if you say no to that as a new grad. So spent about another 2.5 years living down there, almost 3 years. And then kind of I just need to get back around, my people. I need to be in New York again. So I moved back up right as the pandemic was starting up. And I got a job up at Hospital for Special Surgery at our West Side Sports Medicine Institute. So we are pretty athlete dominant as far as our population, but a lot of post ops, a lot of surgical patients, plenty of non-surgical as well. But that's kind of the gist now.
I want everyone to kind of understand about, you got into this and you were kind of with the big dogs right from the beginning. So those who don't know anything about Kevin Wilk and HSS, it's a pretty big deal. And I think Rob will go into it maybe later. We'll see. But before we get serious or anything, I do want to explain the story of where the I Know Nothing came from, since you're the co-originator. I'm
Mhm.
going to tell my side of the foreshadowing of the event that took place in one of our master's class. And then maybe you can share your side when the actual event happened. So for everyone who doesn't know, Rob and I started doing our masters together. I was doing all of Rob's work. He wasn't even attempting to do his master's because he knew he was going to go to PT school.
I had
While
like
I was in
three
class,
jobs too.
true.
I literally had no
Yeah,
time
it
for
wasn't like
anything,
he was
but
just chilling. He was working. He just knew he wasn't doing his masters. I was trying to do his work because I was trying to hold him and make him stay for one more semester.
good
I was
friends.
going to class, and sometimes he was actually working, and he couldn't go. And in our master's class, one of the biggest dudes, jacked, played football in college, pretty intelligent, was telling a story, or he was actually presenting. And while he was presenting, he kept using the F word. And I have nobody in the class that I can even resonate with. Rob's not there, so I'm laughing, and I literally can't wait to go home to tell Rob, like, dude, that guy that we don't know keeps mother effing his entire presentation. So, for example, he's telling a story, and in the presentation, or he's going through a case, and he's saying to the class that nobody has an effing clue, that F this, F that. The teacher's not saying anything. Nobody's laughing in the class, and I'm crying in the back of the class. We fast forward. I sprint full speed home to tell Rob about this story. Him and I make up these stories in our head, and then we get in class together. So maybe you can tell the story from this part when we're actually in the
Yes.
class, and this dude is then presenting again.
Well, he's doing a journal review. He's just
That's
presenting
what it was. That's what it
a
was.
journal that's out, and he's like, and he's Matt's like gassing this up, like this kid is just he doesn't care. It was he's cracking up. So I'm like kind of waiting for it, and he's just talking, just presenting a case, like nothing else, talking about his journal, breaking it down. And the whole time, like, all right, Matt, like, he's like, dude, I swear, like, he went crazy last time. And then at the end of it, he like wraps it up. It was all like conflicting evidence. There was no like real conclusion. He's like, yeah, so basically, they don't have a fucking clue. And me and Matt just died. We were crying, literally crying for like 15 minutes, like head on the table, just couldn't keep it together. No one else in the class is responding, like reacting, and we're dying. Literally 15 minutes. The professor's like, "Hey, like Matt, Rob, like, is there a problem? Like, is everything okay?" We're like, "Are we crazy? Like, did anyone, no one just hear this?" So then that just turned into like a running joke where every time we said anything, we obviously escalated and elevated this joke for everything. So I don't have a fucking clue. Like, I don't know anything. You guys are all gonna get dumber for listening to us today, and it's just that's really it. Like I said, I didn't even realize that's where this came from, but I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that's like one of
for
the OG jokes.
in my memory, that's where it came from. Everybody, this was in 2013, so this was over a decade ago, and Rob and I were coaching together at the time, living together at the time, and it just became a running joke that anytime we did anything, coaching, talking to somebody, serious or not, him and I would always basically finish by going, "Listen, I know nothing." So that's the story. That's where it comes from. That's where this whole sarcastic style of the podcast comes from. Um, we're gonna get into a couple things. We're definitely gonna try to keep it light. I'm a strength coach. Rob's a PT. Um, we played baseball together. We were captains together. We are still going to write a book one day on our last year playing together because it was a nightmare from our end. I don't think we'll get
Shit
too
show.
far into it, but we are gonna touch base on culture at some point. So I might save that for a bit. Um, just in terms of everybody who's listening, who's coaches, parents, athletes, PTs, you know, Rob and I joke about everything, but we can be serious. And a couple interesting things. I've been going back and forth with him forever because I haven't, even though I work with PTs now, I never had a PT to work alongside with. So I'll text Rob in the middle of the day, "Hey, lateral knee pain," and he just spits out three, four things. So it's been funny that over the course of the years, he's been giving me advice on stuff that I've been using, and now working with PTs. It's just crazy to that he was giving me information via a text message or a video within 10 seconds for a long time now. And we've actually had some crossover with people in the past, which has been pretty cool. And we're not even in the
Yeah,
same area.
yeah. And vice
I
versa
do.
too, though. You've obviously helped me
Yeah.
a lot too. I mean, I asked for you like for certain progressions or even just like drills, agility drills, because I do some of that, but I don't have like programs for like too many ideas of that stuff. So let's not make it like this is a one-way street here either. But okay,
No,
pal.
I just, all right, pal. The, 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 the point I think I'm making is I think a lot of times, I don't know if you see it in your field. I definitely see it where we are just so serious. It's like, oh, I mean, listen, when you're talking about surgery, post surgery, non surgery, and injury, it is serious. But I think because of our friendship and stuff, we're able to make this stuff kind of light and be like, listen, at the end of the day, you are going to take care of your patients, and I'm going to take care of my clients with the best care that we can. But at the same time, so we got to all take a step and relax for a second. And that's kind of the point of this whole podcast. It's like, let's talk about things, let's have fun with things, and let's just all work together on these things.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of egos.
I'm not even going to touch that right now. Okay.
All right.
So you work with Kevin Wilk. You don't have to necessarily take me through the whole thing. I mean, I know some of it. I came down and got to see Rob speak at a symposium. Was that your first big presentation or no?
Yeah, I presented on the core at that one, right? Yeah, that was the first one. I was probably just over a year out of school, and yeah, that was scary. There was probably what, like 300-400 people there, or somewhere 200 to 400 people, somewhere in that range. It was a lot.
And you had
Um,
and you had all the top dogs there, right? All of
oh
them.
yeah, way over my head, way over my head.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think
cool
that.
though.
I mean, I think that was the first time for me. It was cool. I got to go down to Alabama, but the last time Rob and I had saw each other, it was probably a disaster at some party, and I'm watching him speak in front of the top dogs in the nation, in the world. So it was really cool. Um, Not to mention that after the fact, there were some interesting stories that maybe we should probably not go into. Um, I don't know, the car accident outside the apartment.
Oh man, I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Wow.
Your
We
dog just
weren't
going
involved in it.
ballistic.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
we were not. No, we were not. And it wasn't funny, but it was just a lot. For some reason, when we get together, just interesting stories happen. Um, let's go right to the culture piece of like where you're at with HSS real quick. Um, you have told me a little bit about it, but I actually don't know too much. I know you have a staff and a team around you, but I have no idea how it works. So could you kind of go over how your team works and how you guys operate, just like briefly?
Yeah, so what's nice about HSS is, everything's pretty much in house. Like, so obviously, so my building, I'm separate from the main hospital. I mean, most people have heard of, or a lot of people have heard of hospital special surgery. They've been like number one orthopedics in the country the last like 14 years. They've been number one orthopedics in the world the last two, which is wild. So that's the main hospitals up on the Upper East Side. We are a separate building. It's our West Side Sports Medicine Institute, obviously on the west side. So we have, physical therapy. We're on the ground floor. We have a operating room on the second floor. We have our physicians on the third floor. So as far as that, everything's in house. So a lot of communication between us, the doctors, the PAs, the nurses, very regularly, whether it's via email, whether it's via our EMR system, whether it's just in person, you run upstairs, talk to a doc quick. As far as like, teamwork within our department, we have, I think like, I don't even know, 10, 11, 12 therapists in my building. We have two strength conditioning coaches or exercise physiologists, we call them. We have a massage therapist. So, we're kind of bouncing patients back and forth pretty regularly. I think for the most part, like I'll have my own patients. We don't co-treat a ton, but like, if I have a patient, hey, I think this patient would really benefit from going in we have a pool also, a couple of therapists that work in the pool. Hey, I think this person could need to use a couple sessions in the pool. I think, and you talk to them, hey, this is what's going on. You think you can work on so and so. I think this person really needs a little bit more soft tissue work. I can't get their lat to really or to free up. Scap's kind of stuck to their humerus here. Hey, talk to the massage therapist, boom, and so forth. So it's nice having people around. One, you're kind of working together. Just look out for the patient, look out for their needs, make sure that we're progressing, and maybe after they're getting the tail end of their therapy stuff, that's when we'll kind of typically, not always, maybe sometimes earlier, but we'll talk to our strength coaches and try to lead them into a little bit of a program with them so they can kind of take them with us and then just keep hitting the ground running and basically take them to the next level. So I think it's very beneficial for the patients. One, they get everything. Two, I think they typically feel comfortable having everything in house and knowing that we communicate with the doctors so much because so much out there where, luckily, I'm very happy and fortunate that I haven't really had to deal with it, but you're working for a clinic that's not associated with anybody really. And sometimes you have to go out and try to develop relationships with docs and try to get them to like you or trust you. And you're going to their office and, bringing them cupcakes and shit and just trying to you're like buttering them up, I'm not kidding. That's how it is. So, and then if you want to get in touch with somebody, it's the first thing possible, which, I like where I'm at is we're pretty tight with the docs we work with. So we got a question, literally jump in the elevator, run upstairs, go back, find them. Hey, so-and-so has got whatever. So I think patients really like that. But yeah, it's definitely a team approach. And, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I kind of maybe took it for granted for a while, but I think it's, you finish baseball and obviously you're part of a team forever, then, not everyone's used to that team environment. But, obviously I'm lucky with where I'm at that we all work together pretty well, which is nice.
Yeah, I can't speak on the PT staff that I work with too much because I'm just starting there, but I'm definitely seeing the other end of it where, yeah, you don't have docs in house, and it's tough because they're a cash based business. It's way different than yours. So I didn't, again, this is my first time working with PT, so I didn't realize really how yours worked like that. And it's just, I mean, you guys have to be on the same page. You have to be organized. There's just no way something like that's a beast of an organization that has to
Oh
operate,
yeah.
and you deal with so many clients. I mean, patients.
Yeah, and I mean, and a lot of times, like, there's some crazy surgeries. I mean, a lot of times doctors really want something specific. Sometimes they don't even reach out and tell you what they want. They just, I'm not necessarily where I am, but just in general, they're doing surgery or they want this and that. And like, it's never communicated to you, right? So like, you have to really go out of your way to reach out to the doc, say, what do you want? What kind of protocol, or what are some restrictions you want to make sure we're working throughout the surgery? When do you want this kid to start throwing again? You want to wait 6 weeks? You want to wait 12 weeks? So it can be a pain, but again, it's nice having kind of easy access to them, but it's definitely not always the case.
When you're talking about like the 6 to 12 weeks, I didn't want to get into it too much, but I did want to ask you because I know I'm always asking you, and now I'm working with PTs. And I'm trying to learn from them because for a while I was on my own, texting you, trying to figure out like, hey, I don't know, I'm not a physical therapist. My job is the opposite. I'm trying to keep people from being injured, and I had to kind of learn how to rehab people without having a background in rehab. So in terms of like protocols and consistent practices that you've been doing. And that could be like, hey, here's specifically after this injury, this is how long people should wait. Or is there certain protocols and practices that you do in house with the docs? Like, is it a constant check in? Is it the old school answer of, oh, it depends on the athlete? But is there specific practices across the board that you've seen over the course of your career that work? It's a loaded
No, I mean,
question.
yeah, super loaded. So no, like I think it's I don't want to say it depends on the athlete, although yeah, to a degree it does. It depends on the injury, on the issue, right? So if you have like this is the thrower and we're talking about growth plate issue or stress fracture, especially something bone related. At the end of the day, the bone's got to heal, right? So like in that regard, you're gonna wait at least 8 weeks, sometimes probably realistically probably 12 weeks before you start throwing. Right. I think the big thing there is it doesn't mean in my opinion, it's not just like you wait 12 weeks and then you start throwing. It's you're doing 12 weeks of like strengthening. You're kind of covering all your bases, covering your ass, make sure that you're targeting everything that maybe led to this. A lot of it's probably workload related, but that's a separate conversation, right? But it's probably we have some scap weaknesses, assuming this is a kid, right? Scap weaknesses, we have some core weaknesses, maybe we don't move efficiently. So we can clean a lot of that up. And then before we get into that throwing program, we got to make sure we have a little bit of like a period of plyometrics, right? So kind of linking the two with like almost like a precursor to throwing is you have to do some kind of plyometrics, some faster movements, where you're kind of dissipating, producing force back and forth. So we'll do like maybe a week or two of two hand plyos, a week or two of one hand plyos, and then we'll start our throwing program. So I think that's one, the main thing is before we get back into throwing, there has to be some kind of plyo period. But two, it's really going to depend on the injury. I mean, this is like a little bit of I don't know, you're not going to see a cuff strain in a younger athlete, right? But like, you're probably going to see some anterior shoulder pain. Maybe it's like a bicep tendonitis type of thing, which, you say what you want about that. Maybe they have a little bit of like a labrum that's, a little bit of a slap tear that's getting impinged or symptomatic. So you got to really calm everything down, build it back up. And I'd say a minimum, 6 weeks just before you start throwing again. Um, Sometimes, yeah, I say probably 6, but it is a little bit variable. I mean, I think for one, you have to really think about the injury itself and like biology and the healing process and how long that might take. Symptoms is also going to play a big part. But again, you have to make sure they can really like, they can tolerate, let's say, strengthening overhead 90-90. They can do something a little bit faster, like a plyometric. You got to make sure we have like a little bit of a systematic approach before we get to, throwing, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more selfishly asking this from my world because I know I always vent to you about strength and conditioning, but the education is way different than yours. Like you learn protocols, you learn, okay, you tore this, you broke this stress fracture here. There is at least some protocols. In the strength world, there's thousands of methods, and it's there. It gets a little bit confusing. And now that I'm working with PTs, I'm asking you because the amount I've learned so far is like, okay, this is how they repair or rehab an ACL injury. I'm like, cool. Why the heck did I not learn this? Because I should just be doing the end of this protocol with my athletes who are healthy to make sure that they can do it. And
Yeah.
the big thing for me is like, you know, how you get educated, how I get educated were way different. And it is cool to see. It's like, okay, you in your head, like I can see as you're talking, it's like, okay, yeah, I'd say 6 weeks here because you've dealt with it 1,000 times. In my case, I have dealt with the randomness of rehab for so long because I'm always trying to do the strength side thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't really know where I was going necessarily with it. It's just more so I wanted to ask, is there certain protocols and stuff that you practice and preach? But obviously you do it on a daily
Well,
basis. Now, in terms
yeah.
of like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think in that regard, like it's kind of going back to the teamwork approach. I mean, you gotta find some whatever PTs, other people around, and talk to them about it. I mean, so especially talking about like ACL rehab, whatever it is. Like that's what it's all about. It's trying to gain knowledge from others, right? It's you got to keep educating yourself, and that's what's I don't want to say tough in the field, but that's really what it's all about. You go get your degree, your certification, whatever it is, and it's clearly not done there. You talk to other people, you see what works for them. Not everything you do is going to be backed by research. You can't just keep reading shit. You got to like talk to other people and then figure it all out and learn. Just learn from as many people as possible.
Yeah, and again, I get in my own personal case because I try to keep things based off of the people I'm talking to and myself. I work with a great PT staff, so I'm kind of lucky. But now that I'm in it, I'm like, how are all these places considering themselves to be able to do rehab and performance if you're not kind of in house? So I'm just kind of linking it back up to, it's like you guys got this beast of a thing where you guys are all in house, docs all the way down to the strength coach and everything in between. And I'm only getting a little fraction of that now, and I'm like, holy smokes! I can't imagine doing this now, not part of a team and not part of a team of different fields. It seems like that is probably the next step of all of our fields, is like it's going to have to be working together. It can't just be a referral here and there, in my opinion, because even like you got someone who is in between, right? They can do some strength stuff, but they still need to be with a PT. How are you doing that if you're in two different locations? It's just something for me
Yeah.
now that I'm seeing it. I'm like, wow, there's just no way I can be like, oh, nope, not today. You got to go back up. Like you got to go see Rob, for example. You're not working with me. So again, it's just something I've been seeing being in-house now, and really I'm on the other end. It's a PT facility and I'm just a strength coach there who is trying to learn from every day. I know it says we only have 7 minutes left. I can't believe that. So I want to ask you a couple things, and I guess we'll
Can we
keep it.
start it? Can we do a second one right after?
I think we can.
We do a part two. We're done. Keep going.
I think we can.
Yeah.
I'm curious
Do whatever we
about,
want.
because I know how hard you've been working and how much you've been learning, and you've been part of research papers, you've been in presentations. How do you continue to stay educated? Because I know your day to day is super hectic and busy.
I mean, I'm not gonna sit and act like I'm constantly educating myself, and like I wish I could say that and be that kind of figure, but I think I read an article occasionally. I'll browse let's say like JOSPT or one of these AJSM or something like that. See if anything catches my eye every now and then. I might read something. I'll listen to a lot of podcasts on occasion. Just same like every now and then. Not a lot. Honestly, a lot of what I learn is from the people around me and coworkers, especially. I get a ton from strength coaches that I work with. A lot of even the cues and stuff like that works for them of different exercises. Like I pick up a lot of that from them. But as far as like what, the therapists I work with, they teach me a ton as far as, whatever, troubleshooting if someone's on a throwing program, um, kind of their plyometric progression after an ACL. Like I'm always learning stuff like this. I think the newer thing I've been learning about is from them, and you kind of hear something a little bit, and then you start to dig in on your own and start reading stuff online or whatever it is. But like, tendon loading principles. And I've been going kind of down the rabbit hole, and Keith Barr, tendon loadings for tendinopathies, things of that nature. Um, Starting to learn more into like metrics with force plates and whatnot. So I think those are kind of where I'm at now. But, I get a lot of what I learn and whatnot from my coworkers, from, other just colleagues that I know from, whatever, like around the country, whether they're friends, whether they're just people that I know, or people I follow on Instagram. Um, I do, we'll check in every now and then with certain people and just have conversations like that. But I do get a lot of, my info from just conversations with other people. I think I'm constantly learning in that way, more so than like sitting down and reading articles all night. I think it's kind of honestly boring. Like it's reading articles sucks, man. Like it's so dry.
Yeah.
Half the time they don't have a fucking clue. Like they're not saying anything. It's just like I'm like, you read this whole paper, like there's no significant results. Like I just wasted 20 minutes reading this shit. Um,
Yeah,
but
I also think we're living in the world now where you can listen to a podcast, and that's just as good, if not better, than going to a seminar or going to a presentation. It's just
yeah,
the world
yeah.
we're in.
It's
You
too
can learn
like
fast.
yeah, like research takes so long to actually be like applicable. Like, it's what they say, research is 10 years behind. Realistically, it's probably not 10 years behind, but it's behind. I like actually Brian Gardner, one of our another Portland guy with
Oh
us.
yeah.
He's got a podcast now where they kind of break down some different like journal articles. It's basically a journal club. But they got a
Okay.
cool little thing. I listen to that sometimes, but shout out to Brian Gardner. But
Gardner.
Gardner.
I've actually just been doing the Anderson Gardner MedBall ab circuit that he showed me a long time ago. Shout out to Andy
14 years
Gardner.
ago.
Yeah, and it still works, baby. Before we run out and then we attempt part 2 here, we got 3 minutes. I want to know, in your career right now, what is the pattern you're seeing? Why are we seeing, without just saying it's overuse, like why are we seeing so many young athletes, high school, college, being injured and across the board? Being in the PT facility for 1 year now, I can't believe it. I can't believe the amount of people walking in with the same injuries, ACLs, Tommy Johns, and I'm seeing the age just drop. And I'm just curious your thoughts on it. It can be a rant.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, really the most obvious answer to me, yeah, overuse, right? And like specialization and playing one sport, being at a young age and playing one sport all the time. We're doing a study right now where we're working with young baseball players and hearing these parents talk about like how many teams they're on and how much they're playing. Like it's honestly so alarming. And baseball, I think, is the most dramatic example of this. Um, but like, you have a constant push to throw harder now. Like the game, at least, and I'm going more of baseball now, I guess, but the culture of baseball has just changed a lot where velocity is like everything. And how hard you throw, that's how you get to college, that's how you get looked at, that's how you get drafted. So, the most stressful pitch that someone throws is a fastball. However hard you throw it, that's the most stressful thing on your elbow. So I mean, you can weigh out risk reward, but I think that's the big part of where we're at. And I know that the younger kids are throwing harder now too, and playing more baseball than probably ever. So at least again in baseball, you're seeing definitely more injuries because of that, and a lot of like these like injuries that's typically were growth plate issue. I mean, younger athlete issues like growth plate injuries are now becoming more of like blowout injuries like UCL. So alarming, but I feel like there's more ACLs than ever. And I don't know. I don't want to say this like training issues, training errors. Like kids were even weaker back in the 80s, like there's no way kids were stronger, had stronger cores, had stronger glutes, whatever. Like I don't know. I don't blame turf for being everything. I don't know, man. I really question like in some degree, in some cases, yeah, like we move faster than we ever, we're bigger, stronger, faster than ever. We're not supposed to be this way, whatever. I think to an extent that's true, but I honestly, I don't know. I question like what is our body composition now? Like what is like our muscle fibers the same as they were? Like our ligaments composed of the same exact thing they were 40 years ago? Like I don't know. There's like all the food
That's
that we're putting in
interesting.
our body, like all the hormones that we eat and all the shit food. Like is that changing our
Mm-hmm.
body? I really don't know because like you're right. Like there's fucking the Tommy John injuries are like through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, yeah, kids are harder, but like even if you're not throwing hard, you're having TJ.